this character was dressed in a dress with a zipper if zippers were not invented in that period of time. So I think it's really difficult that we don't even notice that you have to put in details to make us believe you are in that period of time.
Yes, and funny that you bring up the zipper, because that would be a thing and in some conversations with sci-fi films and futuristic films. You know, there's dialogue that you have around your office of like, would we still have zippers? You know, would we have buttons?
Hola a todos, soy Christina Aguilera
y yo soy Fabiola Ramírez.
Les damos la bienvenida a En la misma página, un podcast en el cual vamos a comentar y desglosar todo tipo de libros.
Somos dos personas que disfrutamos de la lectura y nos encanta explorar diferentes puntos de vista.
Acompáñenos en cada episodio a disfrutar de las reseñas y aprendizajes que cada lectura nos va dejando.
Spoiler alert, este episodio puede echarte a perder el final del libro.
Que lo disfruten. Hi, welcome to this new episode of En la misma página. Today we have an episode in English because we have these two extraordinary women here with us. Trish Summerville, she's an award-winning costume designer whose work has most recently been seen in The Hunger Games, the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. She won Costume Designer of the Year at the 2013 Style Awards for her work on The Hunger Games Catching Fire, and won a Costume Designer Guild Award for her costume design of that same film. Trish is also known for her Academy Award nominated work on Mank, as well as her work on The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, Gone Girl, Red Sparrow, and others. She's an active member of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Science. We also have Laura Cantú with us. Laura creates unique homemade jewelry. Unable to find designs with her exact vision and reflection of her personality and taste, she felt a necessity to create them. And in 1999, the brand was born. Today, she owns 8 retail stores in Mexico. Internationally, her pieces have been sold since 2016 through retailers such as Intermix, Free People, Anthropology, and others in the US, UK, Australia, Dubai, Lebanon, to name a few. The brand has featured in magazines like Vogue, Elle, Basada, In Style, among others, landing a cover with Rihanna in Vogue UK. So we have them here together because these two women have successfully made a collaboration in this great jewelry collection, inspired in the film The Hunger Games, the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. So welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome to Monterrey, Trish.
Thank you.
And I would love you to tell us how you guys met and how this collection came to life.
Well, once I finished the film, and thank you for having us. It's lovely to be here. Once I finished the film, there's a colleague that I have in the States that's very known for finding great collaborations between costume designers and jewelry designers or clothing, so we can do collaborations that they think would be very lucrative, would also be a good fit for the film. And so I thought I wanted to do some jewelry pieces based on a couple of the pieces that are in the film, and she recommended Laura Cantú. And she had a very successful and very interesting creative process with her on a previous film, Amsterdam. So then I knew that Laura could understand like the timelines that we needed, which are not always pleasant, and then figuring out how to select certain pieces from a film and how she could interpret that into pieces that she could design and make, and we could do that together that would be good for her business and good as a representation for our film. So that's how we originally met. And since I live in Los Angeles and you live in Monterrey, we did a lot of conversations via FaceTime or Zoom, emails, WhatsApp, like you name every way we could communicate is how we communicated. And it was sharing images from the film and the characters that we wanted to, pull pieces from to use. And then Laura and her team of coming up with illustrations and drawings of what they thought jewelry pieces should look like and how we could work together and be very authentic into what our fan base would desire, but also spoke loudly to what she creates in her store for her jewelry.
I think when I saw the collection, and also because I've known Laura for a long time now, I think looking at the image of this film, this movie with Songbirds and Snakes, I think
Snakes was the perfect thing for me.
Real great fit.
She knows how to use snakes.
Yes.
She's been doing it her whole life, and I think that's part of your signature, right?
I love snakes.
Yeah.
It's my logo.
Yeah,
It's
and
my thing. Yes.
It's great. I mean, that was when I saw your website and saw all your pieces. It's also the other thing, ironically, that's not in our film, but there's so many inspirations in your jewelry that you have that I also use in other films and designs, which might sound weird, but like bugs, like
Yes.
the beetles and things that you have. I immediately was drawn towards those because it's, you know, I really am gravitating towards insects and wildlife, and it was nice to see that. And today I got to go to the stores for the first time, and Laura offered to like, oh, if you see something you like, and I joked that I would put everything in my purse.
Everything is amazing.
Everything, yeah, with the plates, the napkins, all the jewelry, the planter, the cheese tray.
And you can take everything.
She not only has jewelry, she has also the cheese plate. She has a marble cheese plate that I have as well in my house. A marble cheese plate with
The snake.
gold snake that you can divide the entries or whatever, and it's lovely.
I think what's great that I was saying about the designs in the store as well, it's like you can go in there to buy yourself a piece of jewelry, but it's like an amazing place to buy a gift for someone.
Sure. Yes.
You know?
Yes, it is.
Great.
We try to make like the whole experience.
Yeah.
Right? Like from the scents to all the jewelry line, all the home collection, everything.
So both of you understood perfectly what you needed from each other.
Yeah.
When you told me like the title that was snakes, I was like, okay, I can do this. I can do this.
Yeah.
Yes, it's something that you feel comfortable with.
Really comfortable.
Snakes.
Yes.
Was that the first
And the
movie?
type of design.
Was that the first movie or collaboration you did with her?
Yes.
Well, here in this podcast, we talk about books, a lot about books. And most of the movies you have been doing the dresses or the costumes to are made from books, especially Hunger Games, Red Sparrow, and The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, which personally I love. Girl with a Dragon Tattoo, Lisbeth Sandler was my favorite protagonist for many years, and also Hunger Games. And I feel that it's very difficult for us, or maybe for you, not for us readers, when we love this character, when we have read all her story, all her doings, and then there's going to be a movie or a series, we are really judgy because we are expecting the eye of the reader, it's not the same of the eye of the camera. And when we are talking about these specific movies or these specific books, the costumes are very important in both of them, because in Hunger Games we have someone who is dressing. The costumes talk, right? So, and it also Elizabeth Sandler, because she during the story you can read a lot about she grabbing her jacket, or and you know how she's dressed. So when we see it in the movies, I think there's a big responsibility for you. How did you feel about that?
It definitely is. I mean, I think, you know, if I'm looking at it, because also I did Gone Girl, which is also based off of books as well.
Yes.
And, you know, I am either lucky or I gravitate towards these very strong female characters, whether they are good or evil, you know, and I like helping be a part of telling that story. But going back to what you said about, you know, what's so great about a book is we all read it. We have our own interpretation. If it's a great book, you visualize in your mind as you're going along. And that's kind of the same thing I do with a script and reading a script. But specifically with the Hunger Games franchise and with Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, there is a very intense fan base and a very loyal fan base. And so, you know, I came in and did the second Hunger Games, so there was already a lot of reaction about how the first one with Katniss, because that was the introduction of Katniss. And so it was my responsibility to come in on the second film and kind of raise the bar and up the ante on what that was, and really kind of put my spin and my hand in it, because it was also a new director as well. It wasn't the same director as the first film. So and he's also a director who comes from music video backgrounds. It's how we met. That's Francis Lawrence. And so since he and I had worked together and we had a different view of what this world looked like, it was keeping part of it, the integrity of the book, but then also giving it a little heightened level of like how we saw that world to be, leaning a lot more into the fashion and a lot more into escalating what's going on in the clothing. And then with Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, you know, there was already the Swedish versions that were done because it's a big Swedish character and a Swedish novelist. And so there was a lot of pressure coming in because we shot in Sweden. And so, you know, with that particular story, we were shooting some of the other scenes before Lisbeth. And so everyone on set was very eager to see Lisbeth, but we had all these scenes to do before because of character and actor availability. And so the Swedes kept saying, who were lovely and really great and embracing of us, but kept saying your film, like it's your dragon tattoo, because they already had their dragon tattoo.
Yes, I saw that.
You know, and so we understood where that came from, and none of us took offense. And then the day Rooney Mara walked onto set, and she even looked at me. She's like, everyone is staring at me, and I said, well, they've been waiting weeks to see
the revelation,
their Lisbeth Salander. And then later, you know, that week you hear, oh, yes, our film, Dragon Tattoo, our movie, Dragon Tattoo. And so for us, that was the biggest compliment, that, like, you know, there's this beloved character that they have. Like, she's equivalent to, like, their Pippi Longstocking, you know, it's like somebody that they're really hold close to their heart. So it was a really nice compliment in that way. But yeah, there is a lot of pressure. And I look at, like, I'm never going to make everyone happy. I'm never going to make 50% of the people happy. But I have to do my best to uphold the integrity of what I read in the script and in the book, and what I think the author's intention was with that character, and looking at the actor that has been placed in this position, and how can I best help do that transformation of them into that character, so we no longer see that actor, but we see this character.
That's what I was going to ask you, following up this, because the same person, Jennifer Lawrence, you dressed her as well in Red Sparrow, and it's another personality or another character. Was it difficult to forget about one thing and another?
No, because we had quite a bit of time in between, and I have to say, like with Jen, you know, there's, you know, actors out there that are just very chameleon-like, and she worked really hard at all the ballet stuff. She did quite a bit of the dancing herself, and then obviously we had a professional dancer, because you don't pick up ballet in 6 months, you know.
Not even 10 years.
Yes, right? I mean, you do it from the time you're a baby. But so she was really great, and she, you know, is someone who's very dedicated to the character, and she, in ways, watching her act it's very fascinating, because she can be standing there telling you this joke and you're laughing, and then she goes in and she sits down for the scene, and then she can just cry. And I find that really, really amazing, that you can have that quick of an adjustment, but she does so much preparation. And so it was the same with the costumes. We had several fittings, especially for like the ballerina costume for the ballet. It took many, many fittings, because there's so much that has to happen, and it's so much movement she has to be able to do, the lifting her arms up, the spinning for her, and the dance double. So that was probably our longest set of fittings, was with that. But yeah, like, she's somebody who just transforms. So
a chameleon.
easy.
You said it well.
Yeah.
A chameleon.
Yeah.
Is it harder for you to make something from fantasy, or is it? Are you more free when it's fantasy, or is it harder because we cannot? Sometimes when it's fantasy, we cannot picture it because we don't know it. It doesn't exist in reality. So is it harder, or does it give you more freedom, or how do you feel about fantasy against reality?
In a way, you do have more freedom. I have to say, I think the hardest genre to work in is contemporary, because we all know contemporary. So everyone has an opinion on, I wouldn't wear that, or my wife or my husband wouldn't wear that. I hear that from producers, you know, at different times, you know. And so I think it's like, it's harder to do contemporary, or for me it is harder to do contemporary. I like period a lot, because then you can look at references, historical references, And then you can do your interpretation of that. And I like to try to be authentic about matching fabrics from period fabrics, but then I can make the designs in the way I want, but staying true to like what would have been in fashion during that time. Because it's not like now where it's fast fashion, we change everything. It took many years, if not decades, for us to pivot into a new silhouette, a new shape. And then fantasy, I really like because it is, like you're saying, it's just what you can pull from your mind as you're reading the book. And we all envision things differently, but you get to work with a lot of really interesting fabrics, a lot of really interesting techniques. So I do really enjoy that as well.
When you were saying that going to a movie when you dress a character in the period or historical fiction, I just read a couple of weeks ago that somebody was complaining that how come this character was dressed in a dress with a zipper if zippers were not invented in that period of time. So I think it's really difficult that we don't even notice that you have to put in details to make us believe you are in that period of time.
Yes, and funny that you bring up the zipper because that would be a thing and in some conversations with sci-fi films and futuristic films. There's dialogue that you have around your office of like, would we still have zippers? Would we have buttons? Do you pour yourself down the neck of the suit and then pop out? So it's all these dialogues that you have because none of us know. We would never think now with all this technology that we have that we can FaceTime, to another country at a different time zone, but we're still driving around in cars with gas. And we're still walking, we're not teleporting ourselves somewhere. So I do find that really quite interesting of with where we're at with technology, but then the slow progression of human behavior, and so that kind of also plays into clothing. Like we still have laces on our shoes now, we still have zippers in our shoes now. So it does lend itself of like, it does come up in conversations. And for me, I try never to think of like, we wouldn't have zippers in the future. What would the fasteners be? I try and think of when I design the garment, what's the most logical way for the character to get in that garment if they were indeed having to dress themselves?
It's going to be easier.
Yes.
And also in those books, coming back to the same topic I told earlier, in those books, sometimes it's very difficult for me to imagine, sometimes it's fantasy, all this, whatever the author is giving me, the creation of the dress, Katniss dress, for example, it was so many details that I couldn't imagine because it was something I haven't seen before. So I went and Googled fan art. People have the time to draw and sketch all this fan art, and it helped me decide if it was something I could imagine. I liked it, but I had something to work on now. Do you look at fan art?
I don't look at fan art before I start a project.
Afterwards.
Yeah, and I don't read any fan comments before I start a project. But I really enjoy looking after because I love to see how they interpreted the costumes. What did they see? Or even seeing what I designed and then how do they make it for themselves? Like right now, one thing that I find really flattering and really great is all the different iterations of the Lucy Gray rainbow dress. And there's several people who've made these incredible like replicas. They're to the T, beautiful, perfect. Some of them I will respond to them. Some of them I ask what materials did they use because I'm really fascinated about, what did you use? And we were at an exhibit and in LA just recently, and someone came up and said they were so excited to see the dress in person because they were trying to figure out what certain components of the dress were made out of. And she's like, I have to make some adjustments now, and I thought that's really cool that like it's in a form of art that it can inspire somebody else to sew and paint and create these pieces at home and then wear them and, photograph them and put them out there into the world.
And also, for example, you can give the character the storyline with a dress. For example, in this last movie, we can see this character, super important character, Snow. That we meet him really naive, really nice. And you dress him like very modest. And afterwards, he starts to get a little bit more rigid. And the uniform gets rigid. And throughout the movie, we can see how he's changing and how is his clothes changing with him.
Thank you.
You give them like a good eye.
Nice observation.
Yeah, really nice observation.
I am a big fan of Hunger Games, so I'm really observant. Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
And also the movie I liked as much as that one was, well, the girl with the dragon tattoo, of course. But also in this Hunger Game movie, there is also a character that later we see a character very important in fashion, which is Tigress.
Oh yes. But I love Hunter.
her.
She's just like this angel walking into a room of joy. She is the most authentic, beautiful, kind. Like you can't not smile when she walks into a room because she's just like, "Hey, how's it going?" You know, she's just full of light. Yeah.
Yes.
And she has a lot of not in this movie, but in the other ones, she's very she has a lot of customs.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
She's a lot of work. I can imagine.
Yeah. I mean, you know, with her character Tigress, I had to choose in the script and in the books because of the time period we were trying to focus on. Since we don't have a real time period, we wanted it to be, we were calling it future past, but we wanted it to be futuristic, but grounded in a futuristic way. You know, no one's flying in spaceships or things like that. But then also we wanted to lean into this post-war 40s and 50s kind of feel of the world, the whole overall world. So we could give ourselves, the fan base, another look of how maybe we started in the Capitol and then we know later where the Mockingjay ends up. But so with Tigress, she was a character that I felt she could be my most fashion forward. She could be my biggest representation of the Capitol. And the other one would be Dr. Gall. And so those were the two that I thought, you know, we're going to keep everyone else in these very kind of classic 40 things, except for those two characters and then like the students because they're the youth. So they're the most progressive. And so with Tigress, I did do a lot of 40s designs, but then accentuated the shoulders, added an extra peplum to it, brought the waist in really tiny. And with her character, I wanted all the fabrications to have this subtle wear to them. So I chose to sew a lot of the seams on the outside of the clothing so it looks like it's frayed. One of the chiffon fabrics on her top it's frayed all around the dots, all around the flowers. And then the two-piece pink dress, we airbrushed all the edges and all the seams a darker shade so it looked like it had faded. So it had faded out. And with her, it was, you know, we know in the latter films that she is a designer. She has an atelier. So that also let me lean into she's making her own clothes. She's making Snow's clothes. She's preserving the look of the family so that they can present that they're still the Snows and that they're not on the downside of the money, you know. So yeah, she was great to dress. And I have to say, you know, she comes in and, you know, no makeup and hair just pull back in a ponytail and you put something on her and she immediately poses like a supermodel, you know, and then, you know, and then she has the sweetness of the Tigress character. So it's like she was a joy to dress.
Yes,
yeah.
I can imagine.
I can think also a character that it seems to be fun to dress. It's Effie.
Yes, she was a lot of fun to dress. I was earlier today, I was telling both Laura and Jaime about On Catching Fire, how I was really, really fortunate. We didn't have a lot of prep time on that film because there were some issues with it in the beginning. And that I used to do a lot of editorial and celebrity dressing. So I called in massive favors from design houses. And I was really, really lucky that McQueen responded and let us borrow these incredible museum pieces for FE trinkets. So like that butterfly dress, we did the shoes and made the headpieces, but the butterfly dress is actually the McQueen piece that's in a museum still now.
Amazing.
And having a conversation with Elizabeth of, you know, during her first fitting and pulling in all these clothes, I said, okay, we have priceless garments, literally priceless garments on loan under my name. And I just need you to know that. And she was brilliant, would never wear makeup at her fitting. We would get her dressed at the very, very last minute. And at one point we even made her a leaning board, like old Mae West style. And Mae West was because her dresses were too tight, she couldn't sit down. But for us, in the butterfly dress, I didn't want her to sit at all. So we did a padded leaning board and she'd stand on it and we'd tilt her backwards when she needed to take a break.
Wow. And with all this, well, that it's good because you are using someone else's creation and reusing materials. And with all this, you come of age, the the fast fashion and the word sustainability. How do you manage with all those cloths and fabrics you need to do? You need to have...
It's very, I have to say, in our business, it's very hard, and we are making a lot of steps towards it. Like, you know, I am a big advocate of reusing and repurposing whenever I can. Any fabric that we have left over, we do as donations. Any of our clothing when we wrap, especially like, you know, things like socks, t-shirts, sweaters, long johns, we do donate. And so that I think is really helpful in the industry. I was lucky to work on a project where I was able to really use a lot of repurposing. It was a project on Apple Television called See, and because it was post-apocalyptic, yes. So in that, it literally was buying dead stock of fabrics that were like, there's a company in Los Angeles that buys all the dead stock from designers of fabrics they no longer use, big fabric houses. And then it's called a jobber. And so we can buy that fabric. And all they had, like that fabric on that bolt, that's all they'll have. So you can never reorder because it was from a previous order from another manufacturer. So that's a way we try and repurpose with fabrics, of buying these fabrics that are already been ordered. And with that, you know, I was able to take those fabrics and manipulate them and use them in different ways. We also went to like ocean and sea legacy warehouses, where these are companies that clean the oceans and the sea of garbage and trash and waste and debris, and we could go to these warehouses and buy this stuff, and then we would buy old ropes from boats and unweave them and then weave them to make articles of clothing or belt. And we used plastic bags and wove them together to make, like, you know, aprons and hats. So in that sense, like, that was probably the most sustainable project I could work on. And I was really lucky that the group in my team, my workroom, at first would kind of, you know, give me this look of like, what, I'm making shoes out of this plastic bottle? And I was like, yeah, it's going to be great, you know? And one of the things that we made that was so, so beautiful was when I did a project in South Africa, and I saw how they would use these telephone wires from the big telephone boxes on the side of the road. And they're all different colors because, you know, they just go, it's like reds, blues, yellows, greens, oranges. So they can tell where they track to, and they take them and they weave them into these beautiful decorative baskets. And so I was really inspired by that. So on this particular TV series, the character that we have, that's the queen, that's Sylvia Hoeks, who was up for wearing anything I would make. She was just brilliant. I wanted to make a posture collar and a full corset out of these telephone wires. And Mitchell, who was in my specialty costuming area, at first he thought I was a bit of a Mad Hatter, and then as he started doing it, he was, you know, I was like, and then can we add trinkets on it and jewels so we can hear her move? And he really got into it, and it was just really a stunning, beautiful piece that honestly I wish I would have taken at the end of the show to keep for myself, because I'm sure it's stored in a box somewhere.
I saw it in a picture, and it's really, really...
I'll show you after, yeah.
She's an artist.
It's great.
It's really cool.
She's an artist. More than dressing someone or a character, giving life to this cloth or this whatever dress, it's like you're an artist, because you can see something, get inspired from something, and then create and make it.
Thank you. I mean,
that's like a great value. Seeing being so resourceful, it's great.
I try, and it is in our industry. It is really hard. Like, you know, I mean, we try, like, if we, you know, we try to do 3D printing on certain things. Like if I find a piece of antique jewelry, and I need to double, because a lot of times we cannot just have one. Because you even said, what if you lose something? And I'm like, no. Yeah, it's terrifying. Like if we only have one set of earrings, and it's these earrings that I love, it's a bit irresponsible for myself to really push to use them. So we've figured out ways that, like, we can 3D print it. So it's also something that's made out of a natural resin, you know, that we can then paint to make it look like the antique. So I can use the antique pieces, and if one gets lost, I have this backup pair. So we try and be very resourceful. I mean, I'm a big advocate of, like, you know, certain things in our departments of, like, you know, we try and have canned or box water or water, you know, what would you call it? Big water dispensers instead of plastic, because our industry does use a lot of water, because you have people on set all day and you have to have access for them to stay hydrated, especially when you're shooting somewhere that's very hot. So we are making steps and really trying. So we all, you know, try to come up with ideas of what can work in our different departments. I do a lot of botanical dyeing, which means we get dyes from plants and different herbs. And it does take more time, but it's really fulfilling.
Like our ancestors, they did that.
Exactly, and that was what I got to do with C, because it goes back. They go kind of to the beginning of time instead of like post-apocalyptic into the future. It goes a bit back. So we were doing botanical dyeing with eucalyptus leaves. And so when you dye with a eucalyptus leaf, it turns the fabric like a bright salmon color, like a coral color. And like avocado seeds make fabrics go pink, a really beautiful pastel pink. So it was really great too, because it inspired like my department and my team would come in the mornings, the aging and dyeing department would come in with bundles of different herbs and different plants, like that they either, got on their drive or came in with from their yard, and we would just test everything to see how it worked.
Wow.
That's great.
It's amazing.
What about the budget? Because I'm sure,
I told you.
I'm sure
I asked her.
we all imagine that you have limitless budget, and I'm sure it's not that way.
It's not that way, and that is another question. We had a great conversation today at lunch before coming here about like all the things that we don't really think of, but then being business owners, and you're an artist yourself, of like you have to have price points for things and know what you have to resource.
But we always think like Hollywood. Any Hollywood movie will be like no limits.
In the box office, you can hear like it made in a weekend $1 million. So you think that it's just help yourself budget.
But
that's what I was saying earlier, that when people ask me what's stressful about my job, it's the money and the time is what makes it kind of the stressful thing, because you are responsible for someone else's money, and then how do you take that money and then make it make a bunch more money back?
Make it worth.
Because it has to make its money a couple times over to be very lucrative and to be considered a success.
Sure.
So with the budgets, it really varies on definitely the budget of what the whole overall budget of the film is. And then it definitely, your department varies on what you need costume wise. And my joke always is with producers, because we in the costume department go through the script and I come up with a budget of what I think I'm going to need. And it's quite hard to come up with it. And you have to check like, where are you going to be shooting? Do you have to ship things? Where are you getting fabrics? And then you give it to the producers, and it's always like, nope, that's too much. So I always try to ask from the very beginning. I'm like, you're never going to have to the producer. I'm like, you're never going to have more money than I actually really need. So why don't you just tell me what you have?
Yes.
And save us
save time, everyone.
Yes, save us like days. It takes days, if not weeks, to do these budgets, because you have to do it for every character. So as an example, in Catching Fire, Katniss, even though you have certain images of the costumes you remember, she had about 60 to 65 changes in that, because we have all these tiny montage scenes when they're on the tour and all she does is wave out of the train. Sure. But she can't, because it's in the story that she's this capital winner, she has to have a new costume every time she greets someone. So things like that really kind of add up. And the budgets are kind of all over the place. It really just depends. But you just try and be very responsible. None of us ever want to go over budget. So we like to continually have those dialogues with the producer when you think you're running into a problem somewhere, or, something's lost in transit and you're not going to get it. That does happen, and it's terrifying because it might be something that shoots the next day. We also run into issues of like, on Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, Viola Davis, Dr. Gall, we got her, it was 2 or 3 days before she was to be on camera working.
Wow.
And so when you look at that, that's also all her prosthetics and her wig haven't been fit on her yet either. So she comes to us, so I have to have, and in her first week of working, she has 3 changes. So I have to have at least those 3 costumes, if not a couple extra in case those don't work, in a state of fitting. So that means like the sleeves aren't fully sewn in, they're just basted on. There's no buttons or buttonholes. It's in a state with a lot of extra seam allowance inside, so we can put it on her and quickly make any adjustments instead of picking the whole thing apart and scarring the fabrics. So, and luckily again with her, she's a complete chameleon. She can transform from being 18 years old to being 100 years old. It is mind-blowing. And her hair and makeup team are incredible. Like Sergio, who does her makeup, he can transform her face by just moving eyebrows or blacking out her eyebrows to wherever he wants. And so she was really great. Like, she gave me the time I needed to do the fitting. We did a first fitting. She went out to the trailer to get processed for hair and makeup. That first fitting, then she came back to me. We did another fitting. So you work back and forth with other teams. But like that could have cost us a lot of extra money if none of that worked. because then we have to immediately start making other things, and we wouldn't be able to make it all in-house. We'd have to hire outside teams to make it as well. So you try and be really responsible with your budget going along, and be frugal, be very frugal, because you never know what challenge you come up with or where something could go wrong. Or if they add scenes, that happens. They add these crazy stunts. You know, on sea, I had built all the costumes, and they wear the same costumes for a very long time. And then by like episode 4, they decided, oh, they're all going to swim in the river. They're going to get in the lake. And the lake was 30 degrees. So then we have to put scuba suits that are considered dry suits that are gigantic underneath the original existing costume that they've worn with just thermals this whole time. So you have to really improvise and try and hustle and figure out how to make that work.
And those things we never get to know.
No,
Yes.
never.
We
Never
never
get
get
to
to
know.
know.
And I think it's nice that you just look at the film and you enjoy the film, you know?
Yes, sure.
Yeah.
For example, the peacekeepers. You see one that it's dressed the same, but then suddenly you see like there are hundreds of peacekeepers. So
Yes.
imagine doing. I don't know if there were 100. I don't know, but
There were 100. There were, I think at one point it was supposed to it went like, oh, there's 65. Oh, now there's 75. Oh, no. And then what makes it hard is the people that are the background in these uniforms, a lot of times they don't work again. So they'll work like 3 days. So you fit that uniform on them. And then next week they're like, oh, he couldn't come back. Here's some new people. And you have to fitting them all again. Yeah. And trying not to see any alterations, and like, you hope we've got shoes that fit you, you know, it's those funny
have you
things.
ever had something that gone wrong? Like, for example, I'm thinking about Game of Thrones when they had the Starbucks coffee cup and it was a big mess over the social media. Have you ever had something like somebody wore tennis shoes or somebody wore earrings or something?
Well, there's 2 I have, and one I'll say that it's not so bad, but for me it was bad, was in Catching Fire. We have set people. So like I go to set, and anytime it's the first time an actor's wearing a costume, I'm there to establish the integrity. This is how the costume should look. And then you have set people that stay with the actors all day long and make sure they stay the same, or if they take their jacket off, it goes back on right. So they do the continuity. And there's a set costumer that I've worked with, and she's really, really great. And I had to leave set, and it was the stage when Effie's in the butterfly dress and Peta and Katniss are on the stage with her. And the person who was watching them had to use the bathroom, and so asked another set person to keep an eye on them. So then I come back and I see Peta's boot, the tongue is flapped down, and I'm like, why is his tongue flapped down? And my set person, who's great, said, I had to go to the bathroom. And then I'm looking for the person who did it. I'm like, why is the tongue down? And she's like, I don't know. And so my joke with them was, I know it's going to be everywhere. And they're like, no, they'll never use this edit. We'll never see it again. So when the film did come out and the posters came out and all these publicity
tongue was out.
every time I saw the tongue out, I would screen grab it and send it to her and be like, ruined, you know, and made a joke out of it of like, you do see it. And, you know, and I try and tell my team as well, like, if we're seeing this in a theater, it's the size of a house.
Right.
So if you think, oh, it's small, no one's going to see it, but it's going to be the size of a house. So
Besides,
we're gonna
people
see
are
it.
looking for it.
Yeah, they are. And I don't think people notice that. And then, you know, it became a joke later, because then the costume designers who then did the Mockingjays, the same set people kind of went on to that, because it's all the same crews that kind of go around, especially if it's a franchise kind of thing. And they used it as a design technique or creativity. They had the tongues out on all the boots. And so she sent me a picture saying like, see, you started a trend, you know? So and we try to make light of it, because, you know, you can't stress after the fact of all those kind of things. You know?
That was nice. That was nice. A good gesture.
Yeah.
And have you ever thought about starting your own brand of clothing brand, but not in character, like your brand, like in a store brand?
I mean, I think I've toyed with that in my mind back and forth. I originally, you know, when I was young, I went to fashion design school because originally I thought I would do women's ready-to-wear clothing. And then just a lot of twists and turns happened in my life, or opportunities presented itself, and I ended up in film. You know, went through music and concert tours and things like that. And then I really loved doing film, and I liked the creative process with the character. And I was lucky enough to be able to do from Dragon Tattoo to do a line with H&M that was a line that we did that did really, really well and was a really great experience for me. And I learned a lot. I was flying back and forth to Shanghai, where H&M had the headquarters of building all the building all their clothes, and then going to Sweden to then do the layout and the shoot for the promo of it, and worked with some lovely, lovely people. So that was really satisfying because we just took interpretations of Lisbeth Salander's clothes and made it, wearable and buyable and street level. And then with Catching Fire, we kind of did the same brokering thing, but with an online company called Net-a-Porter. And so that was also interesting for me because both companies are two extremely different price points. And the quantity was extremely different. Like H&M's price point was lower with a much higher volume. And then Net-a-Porter was a smaller volume, but with a much higher price point. And I learned a lot. I mean, a lot of things I learned in fashion design school, I didn't realize that I still really knew until I had to do the line with Net-a-Porter, because a lot of that we had to manufacture. I had to go to the pattern maker. I had to go to the grader, so it was really useful information that I had. So I did enjoy, that process, and I felt like it was a really good fit for each film. And then in turn, like doing this, like that was a new opportunity for me, because even with Dragon, we did 2 pieces or 3 pieces of jewelry, but more, that fit an H&M kind of customer. Whereas with Laura, that was also a really interesting prospect for me because I've always wanted to do jewelry. And when I started talking with her, I looked back at some of my old sketchbooks of jewelry that I was sketching. Yeah. And so I thought this is really great for me because I don't have the knowledge that she has. And so I can only bring my knowledge to her, but then I have to have this trust and partnership with somebody who knows what she's doing and what's going to work and what's not going to work. And so for me, it was a great partnership because I got to fulfill this desire to want to do jewelry.
And it's good, and it's nice to fantasize and divert and do random things.
Yeah, we were saying this yesterday with the students at Sedim. It's like, try everything. Yeah.
Try everything.
We all have all this fear and things that hold us back, and why? So if it fails, no one else knows. I mean, that's always my joke when somebody's like, oh, if I don't give my speech right, it's like, only you know. Only you know what you want to say unless you totally freeze. And then you could even recover from that and well, I've got everyone's attention. It's like, you only know. So it's like, why not try? And, and I'm doing that with myself as well. There's, a lot of fear within things with manufacturing or doing costumes of you hope it turns out and are you down to the clock and is it going to work? And so it's like, why not try everything?
Sure. Do you think you have a signature of your own, maybe Laura has the snakes or something that states your name on it, or it's difficult in custom design because you have to
I think it goes I have a little bit of both, I have to say, because with some of my crew, there are a few people that I get to work with often that I really like, and so I know when we get back together, and one of them is an assistant that I use, an assistant designer, and a key background who is he oversees all the background with me. And so we'll work really closely together on concepts and getting everything together. And so I know I have an aesthetic because when I'll go to say, when I'm looking for an article, they're in gray. And so it's a joke with me that if it's uniforms, I'm going to lean into grays. Right. I'm not going to go into browns unless it's specifically browns. Mm-hmm. And I like to change things up, but it's there are things that my eye is drawn to that I feel it's not that it's just peaceful, but it helps blend into the story. Mm-hmm. And not that it blends into the background and goes away, but it's not distracting. And I think even though I have an aesthetic that can be more edgy or forward thinking, there's something about me that I really like classic pieces. And the corsets, to me, a corset is a very classic piece. So even if I adorn it in a bit of a way, I'm still working with something that's a classic piece. And so I think I have that. I mean, I'm very known for, I do like gray and I really like red. And a lot of directors do not like red because red really draws your eye on film and it deters. But I only use it where it's helping tell the story. The Academy students, once I saw the locations and I saw where the school was and that they all are going to walk up these stairs, I wanted them to be literally like the blood flow of the capital, that they're the youth of the city and they're the force that's driving these games. And so for me, it made sense that they look like blood just flowing into a building. So I had that conversation with Francis, and luckily he loved that and went with it, and and it worked out really well. And so like with Gol as well, she's in this really sterile environment that's kind of scary, but she has this big radiant smile.
Yeah.
But with the red on her, again, I wanted it to look like this blood flowing, so she's a bit off-putting whenever she's in her lab coat.
And also I'm hearing
You going way back.
here. There's a lot of red here.
Yes, a lot of
I
red.
searched in your page, TrishSummerville.com, and you have all the collaborations you have done, all the work you have done, and this is one of my favorite. It's
Lady Marmalade.
Yes.
Yeah.
From Moulin Rouge, and you said about corset, no? Corsets. And there's a lot of corsets here.
Well, we're also dealing with ladies that work in a brothel. So, and with that, like that was a really great experience because I did dress all these powerhouse singers, these women, and it was really like very, very cool. And then when the video came out, what you're talking about with fans or just general public or people that
all the Halloween costumes wanted to.
Yes, like everyone dressed like that. But then we had also these people that, needed to be heard and said, you dress them like hookers.
Well, they were.
And I said, they work in the Moulin Rouge, And I thought, well, how ignorant of you, maybe just do a little reading and educate yourself a bit because they do work in a brothel, So it was kind of very funny. But yeah, again, like working with this amount of talent all in one video for me was really inspiring. And then also to like work with each body type and their own personal style, plus the style that they put out into the world with their music, So that was a big challenge. And as an example of hours we work, that was a non-union project because it was a music video. So we shot, besides our prep time of building all the costumes, the first day we shot 23 hours. Then, we were at work 23 hours because we have to go in so far ahead to dress everyone. And then I went home for 4 hours, I think, to sleep. And I really remember this because my mother was staying with me at the time and she reminded me. And then the next day we shot, I think, 20 to 22 hours we were at work. And then I went home for about 3 to 5 hours to sleep, change, and go back to work. And the last day we shot 24 hours. Wow. And one of my assistants said at one point, he's like, I really want to work hard and I really love you, but I don't care if her shoes are on her head at this point, because you're just so exhausted.
Well, it was a big, huge trend because there were a lot of talent shows for our older girls, and they dressed up from the movie Moulin Rouge, and they danced through the whole production, and yes, here in Monterrey was really popular. And I think even though it was a little bit like 20 years ago, a lot, no? Maybe.
Ooh, I don't know. I know
it's still really popular.
Yeah, because I just realized there was a whole thing that came out. It's like Christina Aguilera's video for Dirty was 10 years ago. And it was, I think it's more than 10 years because I think Catching Fire was 10 years ago.
So it's a little bit.
Yeah,
and
so
the video was before?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was like, it has to be longer.
Imagine. It was really longer time ago, but still, it's really popular today. The costumes, the way they're, the red, everything, it's still.
Thank you.
Very good.
And that's, I guess, I'm just saying, like, there's levels like where I like classic things, That's a video I really loved also doing was the Skrillex video.
This one.
Yeah, because I got to design like the hair, the makeup, I did, and we built everything, the headpieces, all of it was really great.
Wow,
yeah.
You're amazing. I'm really in awe with you. I love fashion, but I've never seen fashion through that way. Like fashion for me is buying a magazine and picturing me how I would exactly. I'm gonna wear this, or the Oscars. There were just a few days ago, and I saw the red carpet, and I like this dress. That's for me is fashion. I don't know. I didn't have any clue how much work it came in a movie or in a video behind scenes. It's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work, and it takes a lot of people, and we have a lot of departments. I mean, I'm constantly impressed by, what production designers can do and what the set builders make, and, and also looking at like makeup artists and the prosthetics that they can do and all the things that help transform us and like take us away and let us enjoy the film,
There's a lot of magic going on there, right?
A lot of magic. It is. It's a lot of magic. And at times you do feel like little kids playing dress up, because you get to experiment with all these things. And I do feel lucky that I get to do what I get to do. Yeah.
And you're amazing. Also.
Thank you.
Do you have any future projects? What are you working on?
I do have a future project. I'm not really supposed to talk about the future project, but I think you have to sign NDAs when you get on every project now. Like before they send you the script, they're like, and here's your non-disclosure agreement that you won't talk about it. I have a project that's very different than anything I've ever done. So I'm very interested to see, how I'm gonna approach that and how it will turn out. And it's a group of people I've never worked with before, so it's speaking of like jumping outside of your comfort zone. So I'm really challenging myself with that of like, working with a whole new group of people and working on a type of project I've never done before. So yeah, I can't talk about that one. And then like in general, like I want to kind of do everything. I really want to do Broadway. Like I want to do a musical or a play on Broadway, because I think that's a whole different level of like what you need so that everyone far back can read what the actors are wearing and it conveys the character. And it was kind of, that's what I did. And when I would do like Christina or Pink or Janet, doing those tours, it's a whole different aspect of like function and movement and making it work. So I'm really interested in trying to like figure out, I'd like to do some musicals or.
Right, that must be really stressful, right? Like in a video, like don't move that much because it can be ripped.
Yeah. And at least with the video, you can cut and fix it. It's more the live.
But in a concert,
we were talking about in concerts. I was saying the other night, I said I had this mantra that I would repeat in my head on the side of the stage of like, don't let anything rip, don't let a heel break, don't let a boob fly out. It's like all the things that
like when the live goes in the
trapeze. And her
you must be
costumes,
really nervous.
I didn't work on any of this tour, but her costumes are phenomenal because I recently got to see her tour and they're just beautiful. And how athletic she is in these tosses and turns that she does. It's
upside down.
Yeah, really, and sings live the whole time. Really, she's a powerhouse. Yeah,
she's amazing.
Yeah.
But I think Broadway it's harder because it's one night and then the other and the other and the other, and the costumes can get
worn down. Yeah, and they don't make that many, and so you figure it is the same costumes that travel from city to city to city with the tour. Yeah.
Well, good luck on all your future projects. We'll be watching.
Thank
and
you.
You'll do amazing, I'm sure.
Oh, thank you, and thanks for having me. Thanks for having us work on me.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here, and for all of you watching. Los que estén escuchando en Spotify pueden verlo en YouTube con subtítulos.
Y esto sí lo digo en español. Si les gustó, compartan, síganos y suscríbanse en YouTube. Gracias.